Natasha here. Today we're going to be diving into some Bocas del Toro real estate questions with our awesome friends at United Country Bocas. Let's go. Is this property titled? Or is it a rights of possession? What's the difference? And why does it matter?
Yeah, okay, sure. I can go through the differences between ROP and titled property. Please forgive me, I'm on a ferry right now, trying to use up the time wisely here. But yeah, so titled property is essentially like you would think of entitled property anywhere else in the world. It's kind of pretty straightforward. People are used to titled property. Not to say that there's never any problems with titled property. We have seen issues with corruption and things like that where there can be problems, but it's rare. Um, Title property is, of course, taxed in Panama. It averages about 1% a year, so it's not horrible, but it's certainly an expense to consider. Um, Now, ROP, or what's known as ROP, right of possession property, is different, but can be very practical, I guess, or almost better in some cases, depending on your outlook on it. I know people are surprised to hear me say that, but I actually prefer ROP property. The majority of the land that we personally own is ROP property. I've heard that as much as 80% of the property in Panama is still right of possession property. Percentage wise, there's not that many people here. Um, so, it's obviously uncommon in Panama City or David or something, but in all other provinces, it's mostly ROP property. Um, but the best way to think of ROP property is sort of like, I don't know, Alaska in the United States comes to mind, where the old homesteading days, where you go and you just say, all right, I want this 5 acres of land, and I agree to deal with it. I agree to build my house on it, make it my homestead, and I'll take care of it. The government doesn't have to worry about it anymore. I got it, and the government just gives it to you. That's essentially how the local people in Panama get the initial ROP property. That they pay a small fee, and they prove that they've been maintaining that property for a number of years. Through neighbor signatures and things, and then that property is essentially given to them. Once that happens, ROP property is almost like titled property in the respect that you can buy it, you can sell it, you have, almost full rights to it. There are some cases where, like eminent domain type things, but obviously that could happen with titled property as well. But yeah, if they want it for a road or something, I mean, they're going to probably take it. Maybe pay you a small amount, maybe not. So that's just one thing to consider. But the main risk with ROP property is that if it's not maintained, in other words, you buy a piece of ROP property and you walk away from it, and you try to come back 5 years later and there's somebody living on it, they more than likely, I believe it's after a year, they can go to the government and say, hey, I've been living on this property, nobody else has showed up, I've been maintaining it, I've been dealing with it. They pay that fee, that process starts over again. They'll basically give that land to that person if they can prove that they've been maintaining it and dealing with it. So that's really the only risk. If you're going to own your property and take care of it, keep the grass cut, put a fence around it, check on it every couple of months, make sure all the neighbors know that you own it, there's, virtually no risk in my opinion. We have several that way. And then, of course, I can give you the example of when you put a house on a property. This is actually the reason that we own mostly ROP property, is it's tax free. I won't say 100% because there could be cases that I'm not aware of where it could be taxable for some reason, but I can give you one specific example. So a property was purchased for roughly $40,000. A house was put on the property for essentially $60,000. So the net cost of ownership was about $100,000 on this particular property. The house was then sold years later for $250,000, making $150,000 net gain. Well, that $250,000 sale is recorded locally only through the local municipality. It's not necessarily huge public record like title property or other properties would be around the world, where that you have MLS systems and tax rolls and these things. But this property had the sold for 250, $150,000 gain. There was zero tax due legally in Panama for that. It's not a taxable event. There's no yearly property tax. There's no gains tax. There could be, like I say, corporation tax or other possible things that could incur. But there was zero tax paid on that property sale. So it's a good way to gain equity. It's a good way to gain wealth. It's one of the only places around the world that I'm still aware of that offer that. So that's a really big, incentive for some people. Not to mention that it's sort of off. Most of those ROP properties are off grid, or they don't have to be, but many of them are. So it's a good way to disappear. If you're just looking to just kind of like just purchase land at a farm or something, or I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter. You can put a house on it, not put a house on it, whatever. But it's registered locally, and so it's certainly a different process. But man, can it be really cool. And I guess the last thing I would say about that is people say, well, if I don't trust ROP, or if it's not taxed, and these things, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable with it. And I guess the biggest thing that I could say to that is, try not paying your property tax one year in the United States or in Canada. Like if you own your home, you think you own your home outright with no mortgage payment or anything, don't pay your tax for a couple of years and see what happens. So it